Hello, Bio 152 students. This is review for the upcoming lecture exam. This lecture exam will include both the digestive system and the metabolism processes. This video will be one of possibly two parts that consists of what the digestive system is, mechanical digestion, chemical digestion, and all of the other factors that go into it. In this video, we'll be going over the digestive system itself and the multiple parts of chemical digestion that occurs in the stomach and the macromolecule digestion processes. So, all right, let's see where we can get this. If it helps you, please get a notebook, pencil, paper, whatever you need to do to write down any extra notes that I'll say, because I will be making a lot of extra comments that include associations that you could possibly use to when you're thinking of, to when you're in the test, basically. So, yeah, let's go. So, starting with everything. You have the gastrointestinal tract, or the GI tract, or the alimentary tract, whatever the fuck you want to call it. So it opens at both ends for food processing, right? You have your mouth that's open for mastication, and then, what is it? When you can't think of the word, defecation, when you're defecating out of your anus, all right? So you just have this one big tube going through your body. You're a donut, okay? Functional segments. These are the main organs that occur while the food is going through the alimentary tract. So you have your functional segments, your mouth, your esophagus, your stomach, your small intestine, and your colon. Those are the main parts that come in contact with the food, so that's how you know that they're the main parts, all right? We will get to accessory organs that come in contact with food in a later bit, but don't worry about those for now. Functions: ingestion, secretion, motility, digestion, absorption, defecation. Those are the 6 main functions. Digestion is both mechanical and chemical, because you need to break down the food with your teeth first through mechanical mastication, and then you also need to break it down chemically so you can have the smallest components for easier absorption. All right, so like everything else in the body, except for some parts of the heart, neural innervation occurs, all right? So neural innervation, there's another little nervous system that the brain has to control bowel movements, digestion processes, all of that. It's called the enteric nervous system, or the ENS. The enteric nervous system has an intrinsic set of nerves, which are also known as the brain of the gut. And these neurons extend from the esophagus to the anus to then control, involuntarily, how your body would process food. So you don't consciously have to process your food, right? So this nervous system takes care of that for you. Cool. All right, so there are 2 plexuses, or branches, if you want to call them that. You have your myenteric plexus, which is the motility of the GI tract, and you have your submucosal plexus, or the secretion control of your GI tract. So the way I remember that, myenteric, muscles, or mechanical. Myenteric is going to control contractions, peristalsis, all of that muscle movement that occurs in the tract. And then submucosal secretions. Mucus is a secretion, right? So obviously submucosal is just going to mean more secretions are going to occur if this plexus is, tapped into. All right. So while we have these plexuses, right, there's also another nervous system involved, the autonomic nervous system, right? Because it's all involuntarily, we don't control our digestion. It just happens and we don't have to worry about it, all right? So this is the extrinsic set of nerves that are innervating the digestive tract, right? So we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which upon stimulation increases secretion and the activity of the ENS. So parasympathetic, rest, digest, right? As we know from the brain chapter and how it was repeated to us, parasympathetic is the rest and digest branch of the autonomic nervous system. Here's where it comes into play. So parasympathetic, rest, digest, motility, secretions go up. Sympathetic, right, your fight, flight, or freeze, right? You're not going to be digesting anything during that time, okay? So everything is going to go down. Your secretions in your GI tract are going to go down. Urinary like creation, synthesis is going to go down, and food is not going to be like digested, or it's going to be slowed down as the more adrenaline you get, basically, right? Cool. So remember, parasympathetic, rest, digest, sympathetic goes down. Okay, makes sense. If you look at page 3 in your packets, you can see that you have this little diagram right here, right? These are sensory neurons, right? And you have sensory neurons all throughout the mucosal lining or the mucosal epithelium of your organs, right? So sensory neurons are coming. They both stop at both plexuses, right? And they also travel to the ANS and to the CNS neurons, so they can, integrate any information that's needed. Say you ate something spicy and your stomach's feeling weird, your brain's gonna be like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom, right? So you have sensory neurons both attaching to both plexuses. These inner neurons connected to the motor neurons. Your myenteric is going to go to the longitudinal and the circular layers, the muscular layers. And it is also going to send motor neurons from the submucosal plexus back into the mucosal epithelium to help it with secretions of any mucus or any exocrine secretions. Okay. Functional anatomy: the mouth, the teeth, and the tongue. The mouth is holds a major portion of saliva in the salivary glands. So all of your saliva that comes and secretes into your mouth is from your salivary glands, obviously. Saliva from the buccal glands in the mucous membrane lines the mouth. So you have two places where your saliva is coming from: buccal membranes and salivary glands. Salivary glands obviously secrete more saliva than your buccal glands, which are just like all around your mouth. The tongue and the teeth. The tongue manipulates food for chewing, swallowing, and speech, right? You need your tongue for all of the things that you put in your mouth, basically. The papilla on the tongue, taste buds, they hold taste pores, which will, when in contact with some form of chemical, give you taste, right? Glands on the tongue will secrete lingual lipase, which initiates lipid digestion. As we know from chapter 35 in the lab book, lingual lipase doesn't start in the mouth, all right? But it is secreted in the mouth, and it will start lipid digestion once it enters the stomach. The teeth cut, pulverize, and tear food, obviously. If you have ever met, your grandparents and they don't have teeth on them, they're gonna have some trouble eating like maybe a steak, like a well-done steak, like a weirdo, right? All right, that's fun, and that's the functional anatomy of the mouth. That's all we really have to know. Okay. So, let's see. Mechanical and chemical digestion of these parts. Mastication, chewing, you chew, you masticate. Salivary amylase is the chemical enzyme that is used for carb digestion. Amylase, carbs. Just get that in your head. That's what you have to know. If you don't understand that, I'm so sorry, but the rest of this isn't going to make sense. Lingual lipase, fat digestion. Lipase, lipid, lipase. They both start with Li. And just understand the lingual lipase isn't activated until it reaches the stomach. Cool. Okay. Swallowing, or deglutition. I don't know how you say it personally, but we're calling it swallowing. Just know that it starts with deglu, and then you can figure out from there. And functions of the esophagus. So there's a lot of things happening in the esophagus, okay? Voluntary movement of food through the oropharynx, all right? Because you're chewing the food and your tongue is pushing it back into the oropharynx, at which it becomes involuntary, right? And that's the last two steps. The last two steps of swallowing are involuntary. The first one is voluntary, all right? So upon entering the oropharynx, the food just goes down the esophagus and the esophagus does its own thing, okay? So pharyngeal, involuntary movement, is respiratory passage closes. So once that food hits the uvula and the soft palate closes, so nothing gets in your nose, the breathing is interrupted, and that's called the pharyngeal stage, okay? And that is involuntary. So upon entering the oropharynx and your body signals to the soft palate that needs to close, and your breathing can be, interrupted temporarily, not that long. All right. Esophageal stage, that's the third stage, right? So it's the stage of swallowing, which is involuntary, and it's progressive contractions of the muscularis that push the bolus onward. So basically, the esophageal stage is when it's actually in the esophagus, and you have these muscles that are just contracting until it is pushed through the lower esophageal sphincter. All right. So remember, stage 1 is a voluntary movement of the bolus into the oropharynx. Phase 2 is the pharyngeal stage. It's involuntary, the respiratory passage closes, and the esophageal phase is when peristalsis occurs in the esophagus. All right, now we're on to the big boy, the stomach. Oh my God. So functions of the stomach. This is a really long section of this video, so be prepared for that. So the functions of the stomach. Mechanical digestion, again with what? Peristalsis. We love peristalsis. Mixing and holding area for the food. Muscularis. So food becomes macerated or softened and then separated by contracting muscles in the stomach, because as we could also tell from chapter 34 in the lab book, that the muscles in the stomach, there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of layers of them, so there's a lot of contraction going on. Again, peristalsis. And the secretions that come from the gastric pits or the gastric glands convert the bolus, which is the thing of food that you just chewed and swallowed. It churns that, and it becomes it turns into a liquid called chyme, right? CHYME, chyme. All right, and that's all mechanical. That's all the mechanical digestion you need to know. Just understand that peristalsis is a big part of breaking up the food so it can be turned into chyme, all right? Cool. Chemical digestion. This is the hard one. This is the one we don't like. Chemical digestion. The secretions of the stomach include, I'm about to list them, write them down. Hydrochloric acid, HCl, is secreted by parietal cells, and it kills bacteria and denatures proteins. That's important to know for chemical digestion of proteins. All right, chemical digestion of proteins starts in the stomach with this hydrochloric acid, okay? Pepsin begins the digestion of proteins. So once hydrochloric acid denatures those proteins that you just ingested from that juicy piece of steak you had Sunday night or whatever, pepsin comes in, and it's just you know what? Let's digest these bad bitches. Let's go ahead and turn them into amino acids. All right. Pepsin then breaks proteins into peptides, Small little strings of amino acids. They aren't amino acids yet, they're strings of amino acids. That's important to know. Peptides are bigger than amino acids. And then gastric lipase. That continues the digestion of triglycerides. So because lingual lipase was swallowed with the bolus you just ate, it is also in the stomach, but it works to a lesser degree than the gastric lipase. All right, the gastric lipase is stronger overall, but it does the same thing as the lingual lipase. The lingual lipase does the same as the gastric lipase. Make sense? Makes sense. Okay, so I hear you saying to me, what happens if I just skip 3 meals and I have nothing in my stomach? What's keeping my stomach from digesting itself? Well, I have the perfect answer for you. It's called pepsinogen and mucus. So pepsinogen is a enzyme that once it comes in contact with hydrochloric acid, it turns into pepsin, right? And you know, it's just sitting there. But if it doesn't come in contact with anything of hydrochloric acid or whatnot, it just sits there. Along with alkaline mucus. So the stomach is a very acidic environment, and if you were to have acidic mucus, that's not good. That means it's just gonna go right through it because it's still acidic, so it's able to, go. The thing is with alkaline, it's more basic, and the acidity clashes with that, right? So you just have this thin layer of mucus that just lines your stomach that keeps it from digesting itself, right? So remember, the reason your stomach is not being digested at the moment because you didn't eat breakfast is because pepsinogen and alkaline mucus. Okay, and before we move on, it's important to know that chief cells are the cells that secrete pepsinogen and gastric lipase. And it's also important to know that the G cells in the stomach secrete gastrin, all right? And that's also listed in your packet. Okay, functions of the stomach. Cool. Continued. So 3 parietal cells of the stomach, also found in the gastric pits that line them in the stomach. Parietal cells secrete intrinsic factor, which is needed for vitamin B12. And it's also important for the absorption of nutrients and RBC formation, red blood cell formation. So you need your parietal cells to secrete this intrinsic factor because it'll help with B12 synthesizing, and it'll also help with absorption because you need to absorb nutrients, and then it also helps your red blood cells. What's not to love? All right, and then another function of the stomach, absorption, a big part of the digestive system. Everything likes to absorb everything. It absorbs water, it absorbs ions, fatty acids, alcohol, some drugs. When you take that Tylenol, it's being digested in your stomach, right? Yeah. So just know that the stomach does a lot of absorbing because of its acidic environment, so it can break down a lot of these like proteins or complex bonds that you usually eat on a regular basis. Okay. Woo! We're doing great. Small intestine. I don't know if you guys can see that, but the small intestine does a lot of things. It's also very long. The major events of the small intestine are digestion and absorption. And they occur always in the small intestine, right? Because we're talking about the small intestine. And the small intestine extends from the pyloric sphincter, right? So the pylorus of the stomach goes into the sphincter, and then it enters the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, and then it ends at the ileocecal sphincter. Where's the ileocecal sphincter? It's at the end of the colon, right? Not the end of the colon, oh my God. It starts at the ileum, and it's the little tunnel that goes into the colon. It's not the colon itself, it's the sphincter that leads from the ileum to the colon, the cecum. Okay. All right. So, listen, this packet kind of jumps around a bit, so we're going to be jumping around just a little bit, but it'll be okay. So for the intestines to do their job, they need help from all of these accessory organs because, you know, they can't really do much to bring down the terrible acidic pH of the stomach, so they need help, specifically from the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder, right? They help by being connected to the duodenum. As I said, the first part, that little curve thing, it's also the shortest part of the small intestine, so that's important to know. And these accessory organs are connected to the duodenum by the pancreatic duct and the accessory pancreatic duct, okay? And the acini in the pancreas creates these digestive enzymes that are needed to, you know, help bring the pH up so we can continue digestion of our other macromolecules. All right. So, let's see. Anyways, the pancreas. The pancreas is an organ that's like about 5 inches, and it consists of a head, a body, and a tail. The head is cradled in the duodenum, by the way. The tail is the one that's like off towards the kidney. 99% of the cells in the pancreas are acini or acini, or however she said it, and they produce the digestive enzymes, as I said. All right, okay. The endocrine cells in pancreatic islets, produce hormones, right? Glucagon and insulin and, you know, all those pretty little things. Acini secrete digestive juice, which will then be known as pancreatic juice. That's then secreted into the duodenum. So first we have pancreatic amylase. What does that do? Amylase equals starch/carbs. So it's gonna break up carbs. Trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypeptidase. See, that's a lot of words. So we're just gonna go ahead and explain them all right now. So proteins are going to be bathed in this chemical juice of trypsin and chymotrypsin and carboxypeptidase, and that's gonna help in protein digestion more, right? So let's see. Fats are gonna be, you know, catabolized by pancreatic lipase. And then we have another one, ribonuclease and deoxyribonuclease are going to break down nucleic acids. Sweet. All right, awesome. So those are just the digestive juices, right? That doesn't make up all of pancreatic juice, right? A good portion of pancreatic juice is sodium bicarbonate, which that is the compound that converts the acidic, like intestinal pH contents to a more alkaline pH. So about 7.2 to 8.2, right? So it's like just alkaline water, basically. It halts the stomach pepsin activity, all right? So the pepsin that breaks down your proteins in your stomach, that stops, okay? And these other protein enzymes are gonna go ahead and take pepsin's place, okay? And this juice, this very alkaline juice, promotes the pancreatic enzyme activity, okay? So pancreatic enzymes need that alkaline/basic pH, all right? All right, okay, cool. Moving on, the liver and the gallbladder. the liver is the second largest organ in the body after the skin. Yes, the skin is an organ. I didn't know that until 6th grade either, guys, so you don't have to worry about not knowing that. The gallbladder is a little sac located in a little like depression on the posterior surface of the liver, right? And that's all you have to know about where they are. If you don't know where the liver is, I'm sorry, guys, but maybe this video isn't for you. Anyways, hepatic cells produce bile that transports to the gallbladder for concentration and temporary storage. What does that mean? Liver cells make bile, gallbladder stores them, and concentrates them. So they get more and more like it. Does that make sense? Yeah. And temporary storage, because you can't have this really like acidic bile that's just sitting in this one little pouch, all right? That's not probably good for the, the tissue that makes up the gallbladder, right? So it's only temporary. So bile itself is a partially excretory product, and it contains components of worn out red blood cells, like we learned from the hemodynamics chapter, my least favorite chapter. Red blood cells are taken in little macrophages that eat them, and they send them away into places like this: bile, bilirubin, urobilin. That's all going to be a product of it, okay? And what does bile do? It emulsifies triglycerides, specifically. All right, it's not emulsifying carbs, it's not emulsifying proteins, it's emulsifying fats, triglycerides. Additional liver functions, right? Carb, lipid, and protein metabolism, duh. It's a part of the digestive tract, so of course it's going to help in some way. The removal of drugs and hormones from the blood. The excretion of bilirubin, like I just mentioned, right? Synthesis of bile salts, because it makes bile. The storage of vitamins and minerals, like SS like to go into like heavy detail on. Vitamins go in there. You can get a toxic amount of vitamins in your liver that could cause you to die, right? Phagocytosis occurs. I honestly have to look that up to see, and I can like mention it in the second video. I don't know how that process happens. And the activation of vitamin D. Vitamin D is not a naturally occurring vitamin in the body. It happens when the sun beats down on us. It's like our own little photosynthesis, right? And the liver helps synthesize that vitamin D and activate it, so it can actually be like useful to us. All right. Okay. Anatomy of the small intestine, page 12 of the packet. Ooh. We're almost there, guys. We're almost there. All right. So, as you can tell, if you've ever seen a picture of the small intestine, you can tell that there's a lot of little folds in this small intestine. What are those called? They're called circular folds, or plica circularis, or whatever you want to call them. But circular folds works just as fine. And they're permanent ridges in the mucosa and the submucosa. All right, so you can see these ridges in the two top, like innermost top layers of the dietary tract, okay? And what these circular folds do is they cause the chyme that we, smush together in the stomach to spiral like a football, right? Villi are also found in the small intestine, and they are finger-like projections, so like little fingers coming to grab all of the healthy stuff that you want in the intestine. And they're in the mucosa, so not the submucosa, the mucosa, okay? And these villi contain lots of little things in them, like arterioles, venules, blood capillaries, and a lacteal, which is important to know for what we're about to get into in a minute. All right. And you know how I said we had villi in the small intestine? Well, there's also microvilli, which are even smaller fingers on top of the villi, and, you know, help grab a little more stuff, right? It's all about increasing surface area for maximal absorption. That is the whole point of the small intestine. It's supposed to be this treacherous path of the food that you swallowed in order to get ripped apart and have all of its contents that are good for us taken away from it, okay? So microvilli, they project off the apical surface or the apical membrane of absorptive cells, your villi, that are gonna help you get everything. They also have brush border. They brush the border with brush border enzymes, okay? Understand that brush border enzymes are only in the intestines, the small intestine, okay? They brush the border with brush border enzymes, okay? Stay alive. Okay, functions of the small intestine. Gee, I wonder what the functions of the small intestine are. Peristalsis, spiraling, they're footballing it in the small intestine, and segmentation, okay? Segmentation is a little thing that pushes, just continues a little push stuff all throughout the body, okay? So it's just pushing it all along the area. Spiraling, you're spiraling the chyme in all throughout the walls, so every little bit can get as much as it can, all right? And peristalsis is propelling the chyme forward, okay? Segmentation, you're just moving shit throughout the segments. Chemical digestion. I'm sorry to tell you guys, but the intestine cannot absorb macromolecules. It can't absorb those triglycerides. It can't absorb those large protein molecules. It can't absorb disaccharides. I apologize. So that's why, you know, there's these little enzymes that help with chemical digestion, okay? So what do we use? What happens? Carbohydrate digestion in the small intestine. Oof, that is a long title. Let me find it on the board. Where is it? What the heck, guys? Anyways, all right, so carbohydrate digestion in the small intestine. What do you need? You need glucose. You need everything else under the sun. You need your amylase, all right? And that's gonna propel it all throughout it, okay? So glucose, it needs monosaccharides. In carbs, monosaccharides are the smallest thing you can get, all right? And that's all carbs is. You need monosaccharides to digest it. Ain't that crazy? All right. All right, let's take a little break before we start all the hard shit of this chapter. So lactose intolerance. You can't, your mucosal cells fail to produce lactase, which is the stuff that you need in order to properly digest dairy. Diarrhea, gas, bloating, abdominal cramps are all the symptoms that you'll get if you eat a slice of cheese. It's not gonna kill you. It might hurt for a bit. You might be on the toilet for a while, but you know what? You're gonna be fine. You know, eat that pizza, okay? Eat it, enjoy it. Don't cry on the toilet later, please. Anyways, the Okay, we're wrapping around again. We're coming on back. So protein digestion. You know how I mentioned that protein digestion starts in the stomach? Well, it starts in the stomach. Like, ain't that crazy? Enzymes are secreted in the small intestine by the pancreas. So this is after the stomach. And like I said, trypsin, chymotrypsin, and elastase. All right, we didn't mention elastase beforehand. All right, so pay attention to elastase. And all of these enzymes split these different proteins, and they split them into specific peptides, okay? So they're all doing their own little thing, okay? Ooh. So the pancreatic juice doesn't do all of it, all right? It eventually finishes in the small intestine, protein digestion, with the enzymes of, well, not enzymes really, but it all happens in the small intestine using brush border peptidases, okay? Enzymes in the microvilli of the small intestine, that's your brush border peptidases, okay? Carboxypeptidases cut the amino acid off the end, specifically the carboxy end, so carboxypeptidase, okay? Aminopeptidase break off the amino acids at the amino terminal end, right? Aminopeptidase, amino terminal end, amino acid, they cut it off. And then dipeptidase. So you might still have some dipeptidases in your small intestine when you're digesting them, and we need to get rid of those quickly before you crap them out and you can't use them anymore. And dipeptidases split dipeptides to amino acids, so they're very good at their job, right? Because you got to go dipeptide to peptide to like peptide chain to amino acids, so they're very good at their job. All right, and that's all for protein digestion, okay? Let's see. Lipid digestion in the small intestine. This will be the last part we go over, and then this will be into a part 2, okay? So lipid digestion in the small intestine. Most lipid digestion happens in the small intestine, okay? You have a little globule of fat, right? The bile salts secreted from your liver and then pushed into your gallbladder, which then puts it into the duodenum, break the globules of fat, the triglycerides, into little droplets. What's this process called? Emulsification, that's right. Pancreatic lipase turns fatty acids into monoglycerides as well. So it's important to understand that you have these two main things, bile salts, pancreatic lipase, all right? Remember those, because they're the most important thing ever. Okay. And, all right. So we're gonna cut this video off here. So this is just part 1. Part 2 will be up right after this one. So make sure you watch these in succession because you need to, all right? And then my iPad doesn't work great.